break from my busy day at home. This is Andrea to talk to you about Abram. At first his name was Abram, and later his name was Abraham. Now Abram was one of three sons, and their father's name was Terah, and the sons were named Nahor, whom we'll hear some more about, Abram, and Haran. Haran, the only thing we know about him is that he had a son named Lot, who became an important person in the story of Abraham. Lot was then Abraham's nephew. Now, Abraham was talked to directly by God. It's a wonderful thing when God decides to talk directly to someone. And Abram was talked to directly by God. And God said, take all your cattle and your family and move to a land that I will show you. So Abraham moved from the land of Ur. We're not really sure where that is, pretty much far to the north of where he was living. And then he moved to the land of Canaan, which became later the Promised Land. And Abram moved with his nephew Lot. Lot had a wife and some children. And Lot and Abram were both shepherds. They didn't farm at all. They were just simply shepherds. They took care of their flocks. And Abram and Lot each had plenty of flocks. So they needed a lot of grass and a lot of grass for the animals to eat, and they needed a lot of water for the animals to drink. So after a while, their flocks became so numerous, they had so many animals, that they decided that their shepherds were kind of arguing with each other on whose land was whose. So Abram said, look, you look to the right or you look to the left. He said to Lot, he said, look to the right or look to the left and pick the land that you want, and I will pick the other. So he gave him first choice, and Lot chose what was really probably the better land. They lived close to two cities named Sodom and Gomorrah, which were very sinful cities. And God said, I'm going to destroy those cities. In fact, he did destroy those cities. That's the way the story has come down to us, that God destroyed those cities. And Abram and Lot decided to get out of there fast because they were told by an angel that they should get out fast. So Lot said to his family, get up, we're moving. Don't look back. Do not look back. But Lot's wife looked back. She missed her old home. And as soon as she looked back, she was turned into a pillar of salt. I was always wondered what a pillar of salt would look like, but it apparently looked quite a bit like Lot's wife because she looked back when she should have been just looking forward to her new adventure. Well, it's not easy always to look forward to new adventures, is it? So that didn't work out too well for her. But then Abraham had another conversation with God, and God said, look up at the stars. See if you can count them. That would be like trying to count the grains of sand in the sea or the numbers of drops of water in the ocean to try to count the stars and see if you could count them. So Abraham said, I can't count those stars. But God said, that's how many descendants you will have. People that come from your family will be like counting the stars. And Abraham said, well, how will this be? I don't even have one child. How can I have all these descendants that come from my family if I don't even have one child? And God didn't answer him right then. Sometimes you just wait for God to answer. You can always ask all the prayers you want, but sometimes you just need to wait until God does things in his good time. What if you were listening to like a baseball game or watching a baseball game and you really wanted to know what was going to happen in the ninth inning? Well, in the ninth inning, you really can't know what's going to happen because we hadn't gotten there yet. So that's what happened when Abraham said, how is this going to work out if I don't even have one child? So years later, Abraham was married to Sara, and he and Sara were kind of trying to stay cool in the heat of the day, and Abram was near a big tree. So he sat under the tree. You know, a tree can provide a lot of shade on a hot day. We don't have very many hot days in Seattle, but in the Near East, they do have hot days. So suddenly 3 men came along. We've always wondered, who were these 3 men? But the Bible doesn't tell us. It tells us 3 men came along. And Abram was so excited to see company, to see somebody visiting him, especially way out in the country. He said, "Oh, please, sit down. I want to prepare a feast for you." It was so important for him to prepare a feast for these wanderers that had just happened to wander by his tree. So they said, "Well, okay, you can prepare a feast for us." Sure. So Abraham ran into the tent where Sarah was waiting, and he says, "Make some fine cakes of oats, and also we're going to slaughter the calf and get it butchered." Well, now, how long get it butchered and cooked? How long do you think it takes to find a calf, slaughter it, get it butchered and into pieces, and then cook it? Well, I'll tell you, it will take a long, long time. And that's exactly what happened. The people that were visiting were in no hurry, and Abraham was in no hurry either. So they could just wait all day long. And we're not used to doing things that are not in a hurry. But they just waited all day long for the great feast, which Sarah prepared. Sarah probably had maidservants also who helped her prepare this. And Abraham had shepherds out in the field who could choose the animal and slaughter it. So they sat down to eat, and the 3 guests told Abraham, they said, "When we come back in 1 year, your wife will have a child." And suddenly they could hear, ha, 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 laughing from the tent. Sarah was laughing. So they ate, and they visited and told stories and did the things that people do when they visit. And they finally got ready to go, and Abraham said what a wonderful blessing it was that he had them as his guests. And they said, "We'll be back in a year." Then they went into the tent, and one of them said to Sarah, "We heard you laughing. Why were you laughing?" And Sarah said, "Oh, I didn't laugh." They said, "Ah, but you did laugh." So a year later, when they came back to visit, sure enough, Sarah had a little baby boy in her arms, and his name was Isaac, which means laughter. So far from being a person who could never have children, she had a beautiful, bouncing baby boy named Isaac, and he was called Laughter because he had brought joy back into the lives of these 2 old people, Abraham and Sarah. We really don't know a lot about Isaac, but we know a lot about how he got his wife. And his wife was named Rebecca. So now I'm going to tell you something that will be hard to believe. But back in Bible times, people would marry their first cousins. They don't do that anymore. Nobody marries their first cousins anymore that I know of. And so I know my mom had a lot of first cousins, and she had so much fun with her first cousins, but she never would have thought of marrying any of them. So Nahor, remember, is the brother of Abraham. And we don't hear much about Haran, who was the other brother of Abraham. He just kind of goes out of the picture because Lot now belongs to Abraham as his nephew. So Nahor had a pretty successful shepherding business back in the land of Ur. Remember, that's where Abraham came from. And Abraham had the idea that it would be a good idea to get a wife for his son Isaac from his own people. So it didn't bother him if there was a first cousin involved. So he sent his trusted servant. Now, who's missing in this picture is Isaac. Does Isaac have anything to say about who he wants to marry, or should he go on the trip or anything like that? Nope. The Bible tells us that Abraham simply trusted his most trusted servant to go find a wife for Isaac. Well, the trusted servant thought, this is not going to be easy, but I need a sign from God to tell me when I've found the right woman. So he said, this is what I'll do. I have camels with me. I have presents for the new bride, whoever she is. And I have an idea that if a woman comes up to me and says, I will give you water and your camels also. So that would be the signal from God. Let me give you water and your camels also. And that's exactly what happened. Rebekah, who is the daughter of Nahor, therefore she is the niece of Abraham, or the first cousin of Isaac. She came along, saw this man with his camels and his kind of caravan of servants, and she said, let me give you water and your camels also. So after Abraham's servant, who is never named, had refreshed himself with the water, then he said, who are you? And she says, well, I'm Rebekah. I am the wife. She's not the wife of anybody. I'm Rebekah. I am the daughter of Nahor. And he was so excited to find out that he had actually stumbled upon the daughter of his master's brother. And her name was Rebekah. So he gave her a present right away. Now, you might be surprised by what present he had given her. He gave her a ring to put in her nose. I guess she was pretty happy with that, because the Bible tells us she put the ring right in her nose. And probably not the first nose ring she had ever had. And because, you can put a little hole right in the cartilage and put a ring in your nose. I've never done that. But that was all the rage in the olden times. So then by the time she got home, she had this ring in her nose, and she had this rich man with all of his camels coming along. So her father wants to know, what is going on? And the man made the presentation. I am Abraham's servant. I'm looking for a wife for Isaac, and I've met this beautiful daughter of yours. So Nahor turned to Rebekah, and he said, will you go with this man? And she said, yes, I will. She decided that being married to Isaac, even though she had never seen him before, would be just fine with her. So they took the long, long trip with the camels. Maybe she rode on top of a camel. Back to the land of Canaan. And from afar off, she saw Abraham's son Isaac. So in those days, they would wear a veil. The women would wear a veil, so they couldn't really be seen by a lot of different men until they were married. They could be seen by their husbands. In fact, a lot of our friends, the Muslim women in the Near East, wear veils. It's not the same custom that we have, but we understand that people have different customs. So she met and married Isaac, and they had 2 sons. The nice thing about these 2 sons was that they were twins. Now, when you have twins, I've never had twins, but they're born kind of one after each other. Sometimes they can be as much as an hour apart, or sometimes they can be just minutes apart. So the first little guy, he kind of stuck his arm out, and they said, oh, that's the first one. We better put a little cord around his arm so we'll know which one actually came out first. And then Jacob came out. That was Jacob, number 2. And then Esau, who was really the firstborn, he came out later. So we'll find out with Esau that he never did have the best of luck. But he became a very rich man at the end of his life. And we'll learn more about that when we study about Jacob. So Jacob and Esau were twin brothers, but they could not have been more different. In fact, they were so far from being what would you call identical, that they were like non-identical. They were fraternal twins, but they weren't very good brothers because they didn't really love each other. Esau wanted to spend all his time out in the field hunting game, and Jacob thought, no, I think I'll just spend my time near the tent. So Jacob was the favorite of his mother, and Esau was the favorite of his father. Now, I've just heard my timer go off, and Abraham is kind of out of the picture. There's not a lot about Abraham dying. So we're already on to Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And we'll learn more about Jacob as we study next time. And I'm so glad that you joined me today. Thank you.